Magic System, Red One, Shawty. Ça va aller, on te met l'ambiance à gogo, tous ensemble on fait le show.
On t'invite à la magie, y a pas de raccourci, oublie tes soucis, c'est bien faire la folie.
On t'invite à la magie, y a pas de raccourci, oublie tes soucis. Oh, 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 oh.
Can you guys switch to the slides, please? Oh, and now the mic works too. Great. All right. So why did I start with this video? What I'm going to talk about today, and I think some of the people in the big corporates, is a bit of a journey of basically a startup-style-like team in a large corporate environment, and how are we changing the experience of health? And what the video you saw, we actually tried an experiment the year before. And the ones that are in the corporates, you send that email out or request and it goes to nowhere. And what was amazing is our G4A family from around the world, within a couple of days, responded with videos. We tried the experiment again last year. It's a lib-dub experiment, and same thing. Within a week, actually, the passion of the people, and that's what it takes to change the experience of health in our industry. Part of that is, as G4A being part of a 120,000 person organization, the key is actually, we kind of say, we'll lead by doing, instead of, waiting for committee or for approvals. And part of that journey, and I'll start giving a little bit of the journey, is almost like creating and sub-creating a mandate as we go along. Because waiting, and I've been kind of describing this as an Oreo cookie, you have a bottoms-up layer that's very hard, but you also need a top-down layer to make that mushy, great stuff in the middle actually happen. So a little bit background, it truly started as a passion project in 2012. In 2013, it was the first grants for apps program, when apps were sexy. In 2014, it was one of the first pharma accelerators that was not investing into other accelerators, $250,000 here, $500,000 there. We've then expanded out to be a more global outside of the EU, and then the journey kept continuing, not just in the number of applications, but we've also been seeing this G4A family around the world come into this, I put in quotes, global team, and saying, how do we get involved? What's the governance process? And our answer was, there's no governance process. Take it what you see, customize it, the ecosystem. And so at this point, we have actually the accelerators running in Istanbul, Shanghai, Seoul, Moscow, Tokyo, and those are just the accelerators. We have a number of commercially oriented programs running in another 6 or 7 countries. And then individuals, and I have to give note to all, where are the Bayer folks here from Bulgaria? Yeah, woo! So I just notified a couple of weeks back that are coming and said, we're going to set up a meetup, the STEM for Health meetup that's running around 35 countries now in 40-plus cities. And again, it doesn't take more than 50 beers, a room, and a topic to actually get out of the office and start doing things, right? So the other aspect is the program was really born with our pharma division mostly. We've expanded to work with our consumer division last year. And then we also expanded, I kind of describe it a bit as we either work with startups or create our own. We created G4A Ventures. For those startups out there, it's not a venture fund, it's a venture creation vehicle. So moving on, and this is back to the people. If you look at kind of just the startup applications we received last year across all of our G4A families, almost 2,500 actually, around the world. And this is not me. This is not just my team in Berlin or San Francisco. This is literally the passionate individuals around the world that are going out there, they're learning, that are working with the startups. We, of course, can't do it alone, so we have partners like Startup Health, Health Excel, Tech Code, many others, and about 12 in-country programs going on. And I won't mention all the other great stats, but let's keep moving. It's back to the people again, and so we've, as I've been in the company about 3 years, we've continuously kept changing and pivoting as a team as well. And actually, sort of my management was asking, when are you going to stabilize the team? And my answer is never, right? The world is changing, and so part of that is, who can go for a ride, who can go along for the ride, who has the patience, perseverance. And so we've actually last year got going with a little bit of this setup where our G4A partnerships is really working with the startups, early stage commercial programs. We have our intelligence team, so think about the 2,400 applications plus the ecosystem. We're seeing what models are working around the world, but also it's important, if you're a startup, and I'm a recovering entrepreneur myself, is where do you play, right? And how do you win? And how do you position it? And so the intelligence team is not just capturing trends, but also helping the team identify where are we playing, right? And then the third piece, which I'll talk a little bit about here, is our G4A Ventures, which, to be fair, was a very political process inside to actually create something like this, very much startup style. And these are kind of intra and entrepreneurs, but we also took people from our division, so in this case, consumer, and working for about 12 weeks straight, very startup style, to get out to the world, ethnographic research, understand the pricing, understand the usage pattern, literally open people's cabinets, things like that, to really dive into those details. And honestly, also, this is the reason why there's a team expertise, because ultimately it's all about people. And when we talk about digital health, it is still clinical evidence is required. We're still talking about our bodies. And so that anchoring in life science and sciences is required, but also you need people that will not do just the regular financial assumptions, but much more dynamic in a way, so that's the business, and then of course you need to know tech, right? So that's how the team is composed of. I'll dive in a bit more into the partnerships, and so I think I've spoken to a lot of startups here. It is very difficult to navigate a large organization of 100,000 plus people. My first answer is never stop. Keep finding people on LinkedIn, keep selling, but we try to be the bridge between the ecosystem and the big bear, right? And so we've done a number of different improvements over time as we're learning, the bear culture and how that's changing, but also, more importantly, the startups that are changing the experience of health. And so part of that is actually doing a bit of that business development with the startups, a co-creation mechanism around, and I'll talk a little bit more. And we do investments, and when I say investments, these are kind of convertible note, 50 to 100K, so it's not real investments, but get it going. So if I look at partnerships, we work with our therapeutic areas and R&D to identify very specific challenges and work on commercial model, and then we also support and accelerate younger companies in a much more traditional accelerator kind of concept. I'm always critical of ourselves also, and this is how we change and we get the feedback. So we're great in scoping the focus areas and the challenges, fantastic. We have really no issue finding startups. They come to us. I think we've sort of built the transparency around our process and the trust, we'd like to think, with the startups. Evaluating due diligence, things like that, where the challenge has been, and this is where we're adapting this year, is on scale, right? It's this death by pilots. You sign off, I'm doing something cool and innovative, check, but then what happens? Just some stats, and this goes back to people. So, my team's been running the program in Berlin for now 5 years. But just to show you guys a bit, we consider a portfolio is any company that has either gotten some kind of go-share convertible note contract with us, a letter of intent, or a commercial agreement. And this is around the world at G4A, about 150 companies, with about a 20% conversion ratio to pilots. But the interesting part is about half of them came through kind of the global Berlin program. The other half came through a lot of this G4A family, accelerators in the countries that I mentioned and the commercial programs. Some samples, and this is a very oversimplified value chain. Notice there's still not that great examples of new revenue streams, and this actually goes to show how challenging this is within a pharma industry to look at outside of your existing assets, and how do you come up with new solutions outside of the small molecule or large molecule business. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about what we've learned. Almost joke around, we're kind of like I'll say a Series A startup ourselves. What we listen to you, the startups, and the consumers and the patients, what do we want to see from us? And I say we because, again, my entrepreneurial hat is constantly back on. So what we've defined as a growth track, what we want to see from you is an actual MVP with the product. The market has matured tremendously. So, a selfie with a dog that says this what qualifies me because I know organs, it's no longer enough, right? You need an MVP. You need a cross-expertise team to show that it's not just tech founder, which has been a trend, especially actually in Eastern Europe. And also we'll look to see if there's patents pending or filing. What can, any kind of early clinical evidence. What you get is 90 days in Berlin. Last year we had over 150 experts at Bayer, and actually one of the things that we learned from the startups, can we as a G4A team help focus some of these discussions? And then on the advanced side, these are, granted it's a proxy to the success of the startup, but funding. So Series A to Series C plus is what we're looking for advanced to actually do commercial contracts and deals, go to market together with these companies. The way we change the process is also quite heavily. In the past, we kind of selected some challenges, worked quickly. We've been learning over and over again. So this year, we really put a lot of effort into very specific challenges, and my team no longer has a KPI and a number of applications. It's the quality and how do we actually work together as companies. And we are going, after the selection process, we're actually going to do very much sprint-like teams put together between startups and the Bayer and the G4A team, to figure out what that commercial model, what's the business model, the due diligence, so when we're actually doing something together, it's meaningful and that we can actually start scaling this. Obviously, Bayer is anchored into certain therapeutic areas, including cardiovascular, and each of these buckets on the website actually has specific challenges. But we as a team, we're also looking outside of that. I think digital therapeutics is kind of becoming the new pharma in the process, but it's still early on in adoption. And then we're looking at things like neurotech and voice tech. So this is a little bit bolder outside of the areas to see how, is it complementary or is it looking at actually completely new revenue streams and models and impact to patients and consumers. So with that, I actually saved you 1 minute because I talk very fast. And if there's any questions, I'm going to hang around here. But I just want to, one thing, if you notice, ultimately it's all about people moving these things forward and the passion of those individuals. Thank you.
Thank you, Eugene. Thanks for being generous with the time, of course.
Just
one question for Eugene. So, people out there, how do they get involved? How do they get support from you? What's the process? Because obviously, we've got a lot of people interested, not quite sure how to navigate, what step to take. What are your thoughts?
So first of all, we're, as a team, we respond right away on social media, both individually, but also on the Grants for Apps on Twitter. The best way is, if you're not sure, we're actually hosting a webinar this Friday. Same thing, you can check it out. Ultimately, the process is very transparent. We close the applications May 31st. The following 2 months, we go through the internal process selection with all of the experts across particular challenges, and then we go into these sprints. You'll be notified towards the end of the summer if you made it into the pre-final X number of companies to do the sprints together and figure out the commercial models.
Perfect.
All right?
Thank you very much,
Thank
Eugene.
you. Yep. Always good to see you here.